Hey, welcome investors to the 40 Finance channel. Facebook stock, let's talk about it. This is one that has performed very, very well for many investors for many different years. And now in the latest earnings report, we basically have blowout earnings, we have blowout revenue. We got dinged a little bit if you're a Facebook investor because user growth was down, if not negative, in some parts of the world. And then, of course, the big X factor, you've had the Zuckerberg dream of the metaverse, which is just like this 100% online world where you interact with people. That, for the sake of this video, is many, many years away. But if you're a Facebook investor, it's obviously good to have a company that is looking for the next big thing, right? And they're investing a lot of money in the metaverse. Quite frankly, that could be a whole nother video by itself. For today, we're going to look at Facebook, where it stands today, and where the price can come in at the end of the fiscal year based on all the things I typically measure. So we'll talk for a minute about the past. We'll look mostly ahead to the future, and I'll give you my price prediction for Facebook in 2022. Keep in mind that my stock picks and projections, they're just my opinion. Always do your own research. But if you do like stock market analysis like this, going deep on stocks like Facebook, price projections, all the things, please give the video a like, subscribe to the channel. Every little bit of support helps, so thank you very much. All right, we'll take a look at the technical chart real quick for some momentum indicators. Pretty strong chart here. You did have some lows back in March where 50-day and 200-day got close together. Now we're separating out. And on the RSI, you got a 58. And I'm just trying to click around a little bit. I would say that that's probably about average what we've seen over the past several months or so. The only call out, I guess, is as you'll see, at least for right now, there is some decent separation from the 50-day moving average. So that's something that you got to watch out for, which we'll talk about here in the fundamentals. All right, so let's get a feel for where Facebook is trading today compared to where it has traded historically. Obviously, the stock market's a little hot right now, so we can expect to see maybe a little extra padding on the fundamental level. And we'll just skip right ahead to forward PE. That is, for me, one of the most important metrics is where are we trading compared to future performance. On Yahoo, you have a forward PE of 28.74. And we look back through the past several years. It's been, looks like, as low as 17 back in 2018, although I think this year ended with a stock market dip. So you got to kind of throw that one out because it was market conditions. But if we look at maybe 16 and 17, you're in that neighborhood of 22 to 26. So maybe just slightly higher on the 28.74 in terms of forward-looking valuation. And that's probably further confirmed if you go down to PEG ratio, maybe price to sales as well. You're seeing an inch up a little bit. Now back here in 17, back through 2014, you did have a higher price to sales. But keep in mind, at that time, Facebook was a different company. It didn't have as strong on the EPS side, so maybe a little bit more of a valuation boost for what it would become. But picking it up in 18, or let's just do 19 through current, you're right in that 8 or 9 range, with 10 being a recent high, I guess, in that category. PEG ratio, maybe slightly higher than we've seen, but not by much. All right, so as usual, I like to look at earnings projections, not only for this year, but the upcoming year as well. Kind of helps us find this middle ground between forward PE, where it's trending, where EPS is trending, and bring those two together. So right now, if we go back 1 year, Facebook had earnings per share of $10. The average estimate for the end of this year, so the end of fiscal year 2021, the projection is $13.12. So that's great. It's a 30% increase in EPS. exactly what you would hope for as an investor. Looking ahead to next year, 2022, $15.22. So you're headed in the right direction there. And as I've said several times, with good companies, these average estimates tend to go up as time goes on. So people throw a little bit more darts at the wall, if you will, in the beginning. And then as the picture becomes more clear, with consistent earners like Facebook, you'll actually see that consensus go up as the year goes on. Now let's take a look at our revenue estimates. So year ago sales, 86 billion. Average estimate for this year, 116 billion. That would be growth of 35%. We look ahead to next year, 115 could turn into 138. That would be an additional 19%. And I think it's safe to assume that that number could slowly come up as well. But you would have slightly declining growth pace if you wanted to get super particular about it, right? So growing 34% this year. And it's funny with mega cap stocks like this because analysts are going to get super picky and they're going to say, okay, growth is decelerating, right? Growth is still good, it's still there, it's still double digits, but they're not growing like they were the year before. So that's a little bit of a storm cloud. There's not really much you can do. As an investor, I would say that Facebook's doing exactly what you want them to do, but you're going to get the pundits who are like, okay, last year was 35% growth, now you're mustering a lousy 20%. The truth of the matter is, we're talking about some big boy numbers here, right? We're talking about $116 billion, growing that to $138 billion. That's not an easy feat, but keeping in mind that even though it's great, people always want more. All right, let's just double check the EPS trend, make sure we're heading in the right direction. This is the current year, 90 days ago. Let me make sure this is showing up. Yeah, 90 days ago, you were at $11.30. Current estimate, $13.12. So this is good. You're making progress as analysts continue to study the business. As we get closer to the end of the year, the estimates are going up. Same thing for next year, $13.52 90 days ago. Basically added about $2 to it, $1.75 or so. And I kind of predict that this will land in that let's just call it $17 range, I guess is what I would say today. All right, switching over to Seeking Alpha to take a look at this data in a slightly different way. Fiscal period ending this year, 2021. Their consensus estimate across all analysts is 1408. Year-over-year growth 39%. Puts a forward PE on the Seeking Alpha side at 2578. Looking ahead to next year, which is more important, consensus estimate of 1572. That was higher than Yahoo. Remember, I'm going to probably land at 17 for my projections. That's a year-over-year growth of 11%. Put your forward PE at 2309. Let's go down to revenue here. And we have this year, you're going to get revenue estimate almost 120, like we talked about, 30+% growth. Forward price to sales of 859. So that's in a little bit better sweet spot than we saw on Yahoo. I mean, it's kind of nitpicking. Yahoo had price to sales in the 10, but it was the trailing 12 months. This looks a lot better at 859. For next year, if they hit $141 billion, that's 18% growth. Brings your forward price to sales to 724. This is definitely a nice comfort zone, I would say. I think most of those numbers we saw over the past 3 years were between 8 and 10. So going ahead for a fiscal year gets you into the 7s. It looks pretty accurate. All right, taking a look at TipRanks to see what the best performing analysts think about Facebook. If you're interested in learning more about TipRanks, my affiliate link is in the description. We got a host of nice updates because we just had an earnings call. So 9 days ago, several analysts jumping in on this popular stock. And if we just take the top few here, we do lead off with a hold, which is interesting at 385. Now that is upside from today. So keep in mind with the hold, I just did a video on this. A hold just means if you already own it, keep owning it, right? Which I think is probably just about everybody's consensus with Facebook. A hold is saying though, for new investors, might not be the best time to buy. At this price, you could have limited upside in the short term. Remember, with TipRanks, these analysts are looking about 12 months out, depending on where the year is in terms of the calendar versus a company's fiscal year. I could be just a few months out in my projections, and that is true here with Facebook because their fiscal year ends in December. They'll do an earnings call in late January, early February, and that's what I'm trying to target right here. But back to the pros, so to speak, we've got buys across the board, 450, 400, 395, 415, 420, you get the picture. If I was just going to eyeball an average here, I would say you got probably a pretty comfortable 400, if not a comfortable 410 that they're projecting over the next 12 months. All right, so here's my price forecast for Facebook. Doing this video on August 6th. Price is about 364. Current forward PE of 28. And the analyst EPS projection for the end of this year is $13. That's the consensus. Fiscal year runs same as the calendar, so no goofy calculations to figure out there. Here's my projections. This would be late January of 2022. The fiscal year ends on December 31, but we have to wait for the earnings report to come out, right? I'm taking the forward PE down a notch, not because Facebook is a bad company, just because I think the market is pretty inflated right now in terms of, just trading a little hotter. And if you go back in Facebook's sort of historicals, I think the 23 is fair. It could be a 25, but I'm going to say 23 for my pick. And my 2022 EPS projection, I'm going to say it goes up from where we see it today. I'm going to put it at $17. So 23 on the multiple looking ahead times 17 for the 2022 EPS. That puts you right at $391, slightly below what many of the TipRanks analysts were projecting. But keep in mind, they are projecting 12 full months. I'm projecting where are we going to land in January / first part of February, just whatever, 4 or 5 months away. All right, so Facebook stock, if you own it, hang on to it. They've got some moonshots for the future in the sort of metaverse or whatever that becomes. We obviously have several different apps that are very successful within the social media ecosystem. They are crushing earnings. They are crushing sales. User growth, listen, analysts are always going to pick on user growth. You just have to figure out what you're comfortable with as an investor, right? At the end of the day, users don't always equal revenue, and users don't always equal earnings per share. So the only downside to not getting user growth, or God forbid, we are starting to see a little bit of user loss in the Facebook universe, people are going to attribute that to growth problems. So the sentiment for the stock could come down. But I think business performance, I just don't see any way that these guys don't keep cranking. I really don't. So my target price, $391. You've got some upside from today. If I was going to buy into Facebook right now, or I wanted to, I was interested in the company. With that 391 projection, I would probably look for a dip of some kind. I think you've got time to get in this one before it realizes the 391. So pick your spots and maybe you can increase your margin a little bit. All right, investors, hope you guys enjoyed this quick look at Facebook. Please leave me a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this. We'll see you on the next one.